Hi, everybody. This is Mark Sage, the Executive Director of the AR for Enterprise Alliance, or known as the AREA. And this is our latest Fireside chat. I'm really happy and excited to introduce Randy Nunez, who is a long-term expert in the AR space and has done an amazing amount of work. And I've been lucky enough to know this gentleman for a number of years now. So, Randy, maybe we could start by just introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. So I've been in the XR field for a number of years, and my role was to sort of investigate the technology, understand the actual activities that are going on. What's the landscape like? What are the devices? What are the software? What are the services? And we would do proofs of concepts to try to test those out for understanding what those key business use cases were. Did many presentations on the topic, sort of educating people on what the XR space is, and as well as publishing some technical briefs.
Perfect, thank you. And I know you've had a wide range of experience, and that really takes me to the first question. Kind of in your experience, what really are the top use cases that you've seen for enterprise AR?
Well, I'll talk about three. First one is remote expert. So being able to, one of the reasons that I think it's sort of a starting point is it doesn't require a lot of content creation, but it does require you to have some very solid and good wireless network capability. And so to have faster resolution of issues, reduce or eliminate travel, and as we saw with COVID-19, it really came to the rescue in certain places where we couldn't travel very much. Second one is training, or what I like to call guided instructions. So here, where you're having to create more content, so you might need some subject matter expertise to create that, but more and more there are software products that allow you to create your own content, much like you would create for a presentation. And then design visualization, so being able to represent that digital content, whether it be a new wall in a construction area, or can this piece of equipment fit in a certain area. And so here you might need a much more significant content creation capability, maybe people with skills in some of the gaming engines or rendering engines, but it can really transform your business because now you can digitally represent things without, or minimize doing how many physical representations you can do.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I think it's interesting. There was a key theme across all of those things around content. I guess that's something that you've experienced and noticed through your work, that content is, as they say, king quite often in the AR space. Is that something you would agree with?
Yes. So there's different degrees of that content as well. I mean, when you're talking about remote expert, a lot of it is video, just videos based on camera and things like that. But there could be markups. You know, some technology allows you to do markups so you can more pinpoint what the issue might be. And with training, obviously, there's not only the content you need to create, but what you tend to find is there's a lot of tacit information that's in people's heads. So you think that people have the training material and they just give it to you. Well, my experience is they might have training material, but it needs to be adapted for XR devices. And of course, design visualization. If you're taking CAD data and digitizing it, it takes it's still a bit of an art form, because you need to be able to match the capability of the devices as well as the speed. So the more polygons you have, obviously the more CPU power you're going to need, and but then there's sort of a balancing act with that, right?
Yeah, no, perfect. That's really insightful. Thank you. So you've talked about some, and I know you've been involved in lots of other kind of use cases. So what are your kind of thoughts on the key inhibitors for broader adoption of enterprise AR?
Well, if you look across the emerging technology space, I don't think XR is as ubiquitous as some of the solutions out there. If you look at things like IoT and artificial intelligence, so IoT, you could instrument almost anything and be able to collect data on it. It's very, very critical, and you could see it applying to a lot of different business units. And AI, you can't think of an application that wouldn't benefit from AI. But when you're looking at XR, it's really more niche use cases, I would say. Or there are places that it is transformational, but I don't think it's as ubiquitous. And so it's a little harder to actually try to find those key use cases. So when you're talking about head-mounted displays, for example, there's the initial cost for building out the service. So, for example, if you're in the older days when you had PCs, you built out the service for a PC, and then you added MacBooks in. The MacBooks were at a smaller quantity, but you still had to put in the same amount of work to build a service around it. And I think the same applies with head-mounted displays, so that can really slow a business down. And then the last thing, there's still some challenges with the hardware. We'd like more battery life. We'd like lighter devices, the heat dissipation, and then the user interface. So all those are improving, but I think there's still some ways to go on that.
Yeah, and thank you for the insights. I think it's fair to say that we've been around enough to see lots of different use cases which are getting a really good return on investment. The key is, and just to emphasize the point that you've made, is being really clear on what problem you're trying to solve. We use the term use cases, but actually it's about solving a business problem. And quite often we have to genericize the use case, like you said, to call it something like training and guided instructions. But actually, when you look at some of the problems that companies are solving, they're kind of very specific, but they're showing them a huge ROI.
Yes, it's true. You have to find them, though. You have to find them. Like for training, you have to actually find a use case where people are using their hands, for example. I mean, hands-free to me is huge benefit. So you can actually train people while they're working with AR. That's why I call it guided instructions, because I can actually, instead of someone sitting in front of a laptop and trying to remember something, I can have them in front of a machine and actually doing the work that they're being trained on.
Yeah, and maybe something we can work on in the future. I actually think the term training could go away as the kind of quality of the hardware and then the prices drop. People they're becoming effective straight away. They literally can put on an AR experience, do the task as soon as they kind of walk into the door as a new employee. So I'm kind of wondering, the term training, as we traditionally think about it, we may have to change the term or use something else. And I think guided instructions is a really good example of that.
That's why I use it.
That's why you use it. Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about some of the use cases. We talked about some of the kind of inhibitors and barriers to adoption. I'm kind of keen, and I know that you've worked hard on this and have some ideas about gaining buy-in. Quite often this is about looking at the organization and multiple different layers and getting buy-in to deliver those projects. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about your experience and maybe some tips and tricks of what you've been able to do to help that.
Well, I don't think there's one magic solution that's going to work for everyone, but I think there are some principles you can try and see if they work for you. I'm a big believer that you need executive sponsorship. Mm-hmm. You need someone at the C-suite level to really champion your efforts. But you can also leverage, for example, do you have innovation organization? Do you have a digitization effort going on? Or do you have like a quality czar? Do you have someone that's looking to improve quality? So you can leverage those teams because they are tasked with innovation, they're tasked with digitization, they're tasked with quality. And if you can show that XR can make inroads in those specific areas, I think that goes a long way to adoption. Now, I'm a big believer also that your champions need to try the technology. Mm-hmm. And my experience is that executives don't like to look awkward. So you have to think about how can you set it up so that they can try the technology and they won't look awkward. Many times it might be a private setting, having things set up well ahead of time, picking the right technology so that it's simple for them to use and they get it right away. And pretty much you kind of know once they try it if it really resonates with them. Mm-hmm. So another area is to find those influencers, those people in the company that can actually make or break certain projects. Again, look at those innovation groups, look at the digitization efforts. Is there a research arm because they're responsible for bringing in new technology. Do you have an advanced team? Because this is advanced technology. And when you're going in a location and demonstrating to people, I like to try to find a role that I call the mayor. So the mayor is an influencer in that location. Now, that might be a formal title, but a lot of times these are more informal roles. And it's people, it's a person or persons that really other people look up to or seek guidance from. And so those people can be, if you can win them over, those people can be great champions. And I think sometimes what you'll find is initially with technology, there's a resistance to it.
Yeah.
And if you can win those people over, they'll be your biggest champions. And they'll speak for you, which is the most powerful thing. So another area is the business case, of course. Now, there are a lot of companies that will do hard or ROI. I need to know the exact return on investment. I think, though, a lot of people talk hard ROI, but really it's around having a good approach, a good plan, and having some documentation or some metrics to support it. Because fundamentally, I think it gets down to what am I not going to fund in order to pay for this? So it's a tit for tat type things. You usually don't have brand new money coming in. And the last thing I'll talk about is your approach. So you're an SME, but if you walk into an environment with an SME as an expert and you must follow me and do it my way, I think that is a huge challenge for people. I think what you want to do is bring them along with you on the journey. You want to meet them where they are with their knowledge of the technology, because it can be intimidating, and bring them along. You need to spend a lot of time listening to their issues, understanding their business challenges. And I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey's seek first to understand and then be understood. And one angle is you might want to approach or target one specific area or group of people. And millennials and Gen Zs are a great example. Typically, they're newer employees. They need to understand things more, so they might need more training. But they are digital natives. They take to this technology. And so getting them on board and showing how they could do a process or accomplish something at a speed much greater than even an experienced person can be very powerful. And you might see this sort of peer pressure start to develop where, again, those people who might be resistant, they would go to those mayors and say, what's going on over here? Maybe I need to find out more about it. But ultimately, it depends a lot on your culture. So you have to understand how your culture brings things in and really work with that.
Randy, that's amazing. I think and all of it was amazing, but some of the insights around the kind of human and change management side to actually deploy this technology, it's often overlooked. And I think there was some really insightful and helpful kind of bits there as well that I'm sure our listeners will be really excited about. So, Barney, thank you very much for your insights. I'm sure we've been talking about doing some more work and some more kind of research and some more blog articles. So again, thank you for your support, and thank you very much indeed for your help.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.